Okay, guys. So we're gonna get started. Please turn your cameras on. Okay, guys, thank you so much. So please don't forget to turn your cameras on. I think I only see 2 cameras. Okay, so please, while we start, make sure that you turn your cameras. All right, guys. Now, today we're gonna be starting a new section. Yesterday, we finished practicing task number 4 of the speaking section, right? And remember, we said in the speaking section, how many questions we had in the speaking section? You guys remember?
4.
4 questions, exactly. So in the speaking section, we had 4 questions. And yesterday we finished with question number 4, which means that for now we're done with the speaking section, all right? Now we're gonna move on to the next section, which is the writing section, okay?
Teacher.
Yes.
And the question 1.
We're gonna see it. We're gonna see it at the end of the course. That will be the last thing we do.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yes. The thing is, we don't really do it in order because every week, well, in your group, nobody's gonna be at it. But I mean, you guys were added to previous groups. So some of you guys have already seen task number 1 and some of you haven't. But at the end of the day, everyone is gonna get to see every part of the test. So we are gonna see task number 1 during our last week. Okay? Okay, guys. So the writing section. I wanted to start by saying that the writing section is actually very similar to the speaking section. How? Both sections, writing and speaking, are what we call production sections, which means that you get to produce your own responses, right? It is completely different in the reading and listening, because in the reading and listening, they give you the questions, they give you options, it's everything's multiple choice, and you just select an option, right? You don't really produce or come up with your response, you just choose one. However, in the writing and in the speaking, it's a lot more open than the reading and listening. That's why I would say that it is always easier to work in writing and speaking, because there are a lot of tricks, a lot of things that you can do to quickly improve and get better scores in writing and speaking than reading and listening. You know, those skills are not as easy to work on as these ones. So take advantage of this opportunity. Now the writing section. The writing section has 2 questions. All right, the whole writing section is going to be about 60 minutes, 55 to 60 minutes. You're going to spend 1 hour in the writing section. And this writing section contains 2 questions. So in the speaking, we have 4. In the writing section, we have only 2 questions. You still have integrated and independent questions. Do you guys remember what this meant? Integrated and independent? What did that mean? What was integrated and what was independent? Can anyone tell me? No, you don't remember? Well, basically both in the speaking and in the writing section. Integrated means that you get to integrate your skills, right? So even though this is supposed to be the writing section, in the integrated question, they will also evaluate your listening and your reading skills. So it will be like an integrated evaluation. And in the independent writing, it's just your writing what matters the most, okay? So that is the difference. In the integrated one, you have to base your response on something they give you, on material they give you to work with. Whereas in the independent writing, you don't have any material. They just ask you a question and you come up with an essay in order to answer that question. So it doesn't depend on anything. You can write whatever you want in the independent one, right? You talk about yourself. You talk about you, right? You can say, I think, I believe, I have experienced this. But in the integrated one, you're just acting like a reporter. You're just reporting or summarizing something, right? You're like, oh, the student said this, the professor said that. So that is the integrated questions, okay? Now, today we're gonna start with the integrated question, and we will continue tomorrow, okay? Because we won't make it on time to finish today. We have a total of, I'd say, 6 classes to work on the writing section, so we'll be fine. Now, another thing I wanted to start by saying is the way that they evaluate the writing section is practically the same as how they evaluated the speaking section. So I remember we talked about this in class. We said the criteria they use to evaluate your responses, in this case, are going to be 2. First one is content. So that basically means what you write, if it's coherent, if it's logical, if it makes sense, if it's long enough, if it's not just one paragraph, if it has details, it has examples, if it is like complete on its own, it doesn't need more explanations, if it's understandable, if you're using transition words or linking words or connectors to connect your ideas and express them well, that is content. And second criteria is language use, which basically means vocabulary and grammar, right? When I talk about vocabulary, it means that, and I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna require for you guys to have a little bit more vocabulary for this writing section than you did in the speaking, okay? Vocabulary is more important in the writing than it is in the speaking. So in terms of vocabulary, you have to have a good range of vocabulary. It's not supposed to be just basic vocabulary that you use, and it's gonna have to be appropriate vocabulary, right? We've talked about this too. In grammar, of course, it has to be correct grammar, and you also need to show, and this is really important, pay attention, in the writing section, it isn't enough that you just have correct grammar, that you don't make mistakes, okay? That's just basic. But another thing that you have to do in terms of grammar is show grammar variety, okay? So what does that mean? That means that you need to show that you can use different structures, different grammar structures. So if everything you write is just simple present, simple sentences, you're not showing any variety in the grammar you're using. You're just using simple sentences and one tense, and you're not showing this variety. Okay, so in order to have a top score here in the writing section, you need to actually show that you can use different structures. So you can use compound sentences, you can use more than one tense, you can use conditionals, you can use different things, right, related to grammar. So is this okay, guys? Do you understand what I mean when I say grammar variety? And well, all of the other criteria we discussed. Is that okay? Yes? Okay, guys. Awesome. So today, as I was telling you, we're gonna start with the first integrated writing. That is the first one you get. Okay, we'll start there. Now, going directly to what you have to do, this is what you're gonna do. In the integrated writing, first thing you'll do is read a passage. So you will read like an article. It is obviously longer than the ones you read in the speaking section. It is a little bit longer, but it's not that much. You will read this article for exactly 3 minutes. You will have the timer there, and you will have 3 minutes to read the article, okay? You just have to read it. You are allowed to take notes, but believe me, you don't have to take notes. Please don't take notes here. All right, we'll talk about why later. Now, after you read, after those 3 minutes are over, you have to listen to a lecture. This lecture is going to be about the same article, okay? In the lecture, the professor, this word is wrong, okay? Because it's not always the case, not always, most of the time, but not always. But the professor always responds to the article. So the professor talks about that article that you read in the lecture. You have to listen to that class, and you gotta take notes. So here you do need to take notes, right? On the most important parts, on the relevant information, the keywords, and what I'm gonna tell you about. So that's it. You read the passage, you listen to the lecture, and finally you get the question, which is going to ask you to summarize both the lecture and the passage. Okay? You're going to write a text summarizing this, but it's not just going to be any text. The text that you write needs to be an essay. Does anyone know what an essay is? What is an essay? Any ideas on what an essay is? It's an academic text. So there's a difference, let's say, between an essay and a letter, right? A letter is not academic. A letter is just casual. You write a letter to a friend, but an essay is an academic paper. So it's something that you write that is explaining a point, explaining an idea or explaining arguments. There are different types of essays, right? You have informative essays when you want to inform the audience about something. You have argumentative essays when you have to defend a point, you have to defend a perspective. There are many types. In this case, you're just gonna write an informative essay. So you're just gonna inform the reader about something. Okay, guys? So any questions about this? You read the passage for 3 minutes, listen to the lecture, and write your essay. You will have, by the way, 20 minutes exactly to write the essay. So after reading and after listening, you get 20 minutes to finish the essay. Okay, any questions? No questions? Okay, guys. So we're gonna go directly to an example, but before we do that, I wanna show you this. This is kind of how it will look like when you're taking the test. All right, first you will read the article. So you will get this article here that you have on the left. You will get it on your screen first for 3 minutes. You will have time to read, right? As I was telling you, we are allowed to take notes. After you read, you will listen to the lecture, so the screen will change. You will just have an image and the audio file will play. You have to listen to the lecture, and finally you get this on your screen, as you can see right now. Now, on top of the screen, you have the question, which is the same as usual. Summarize, we're gonna talk about. You have the question there. Now, as you can see on the right or on the left, it changes, but you will always have the text. You will always 100% of the time have the text or the passage for you to read when you're writing at the same time. So you can actually write your essay and read simultaneously at the same time. Okay, guys? That's why I told you not to take notes from the reading, because you don't need it. It will be there. It won't go away. However, the lecture, you can only listen to it once. They're not gonna play it for you again. So you just hear it once and that's it. That's why you need to take notes in the lecture and not in the reading, okay? And here on the right, you will be typing your response. Remember that you take it on a computer, so you need to type your response on the right. And here's your essay, right? Is this okay? Do you have any questions about the format? Okay, guys. So let's go to an example. Let's just start with an example. This is a reading, okay? Technically, we would have only 3 minutes to read. Right now, I'm only going to give you 3 minutes, but then we're going to discuss together as a group, okay? I think that it's better if you read it on your own, because that's the way that it's going to be during the test. So I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes to read the text. Read this article, just read, try to understand the main ideas. Don't take any notes, okay? We will have exactly 3 minutes. It's 7:19, so until 7:27 or 28 it'll be. Okay, guys? So please start reading the text now. Okay, guys, so time's up. Now, there are many things that you can have here. In this writing part, in the writing number one, the integrated writing, there are different structures that you can have, right? We're gonna do one of each so that you are prepared in case of, I mean, no matter which one you get, you're prepared, okay? The first one we're doing, remember this is an argumentative article, okay? This is an argumentative article that you're reading. It's not the only type that you will read, but this is the first one we're doing. So what does it mean, argumentative? What do you think it means? What's an argumentative article? Do you guys know what an argument is? Sergio, what do you think it means?
Argumentativo.
Exactly. So what is it?
Un artículo argumentativo.
Okay, and ¿cómo es un artículo argumentativo?
O sea, que intenta explicarnos algo, digamos.
Okay, yes, kind of. Not necesariamente explicar, right? It's not, this article is not necessarily explaining something, but the purpose of this article here, of an argumentative article, is to convince, okay? So an argumentative article is gonna try to convince the reader of a point, or an argument, right? An argument, a point, the same thing, or a claim, we could say, or a perspective, a point of view. So in this article, the author of the article, the writer, the person who wrote this article, is trying to convince us of their opinion, okay? So how? Do you see how we have 4 paragraphs? We have 4 paragraphs, right? This is paragraph 1, 2, 3, and 4. It will always be like that. No matter what type of article you have, it will always have 4 paragraphs. Now, when you have the case of an argumentative article, these paragraphs are going to be like this. In the first one, you will have an introduction, right? This is the introduction. And in the introduction, you will have the main argument or the main claim, the main point presented in the introduction. So in the introduction, you should be able to identify the perspective of the author's point of view about this topic. So what is the topic? What would you guys say this is about? What is the topic? What is this about? Anyone? Come on, guys, you already read it. So what was it about?
It's reading less literature.
Exactly. This is about how people are reading less literature nowadays, right? That isn't a point, that isn't an opinion, is it? In the beginning, we have a recent study reveals that people, especially young people, are reading far less literature than they used to, right? Do you guys think that that is an opinion? No, right? It's not an opinion. It's a study that has been done. So a study reveals that people are reading far less literature is a fact. It's not an opinion, right? So that is the topic, the fact. The fact that people are reading less literature is the topic, right? Now, remember that this is an argumentative article, and the author is trying to convince us of an opinion, of his opinion or her opinion. So can you tell me, guys, what their opinion is? So what is his or her opinion on the topic, right? About the fact that people are reading less literature. So what does the author think about that topic? What is his or her opinion? Come on, guys, take a guess. What would you say?
I think it's the effect for the reading public.
Okay. Come again. It is what?
The effects for the reading public and the culture and the future of the literature.
Okay, so his opinions, his opinion or her opinion is the effects. You sure? He has an opinion about the effects, right? So what does he think the effects of this trend is? This is the opinion, guys. It is related to the effects of the fact that people are reading less literature, but the author's opinion, the author's main opinion is that the fact that people are reading less literature has unfortunate effects. Okay, that would be his opinion. Everything else are facts in here, right? We know that people are reading less literature. As a matter of fact, they are. Now, the author thinks that this has unfortunate effects, right? For the reading public, for culture, and for the future of literature. Is that okay? Do you guys agree with me? Or maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? Would you say that that is their opinion? Does it make sense or not? Yes, do we agree on that? Can you see why? Remember, try to always differentiate between an opinion and facts, right? Or examples. So in this case, it's a fact that people are reading less literature. That cannot be the opinion. So the opinion has to be everything that comes with adjectives, right? I think this is, for example, I can say, I think that Shakira is the best singer of the entire world, right? So that is my opinion. I just think that, I just feel that way. Or I could say the opposite. I think this person is the worst singer of all time. So that is again my opinion. I'm giving them an adjective. Same thing here, right? We know that, of course, this trend is going to have some effects. Now, the author's opinion is that these effects are unfortunate, right? For the reading public and so on. So do you guys agree with me? Do you see the difference between an opinion, a point, an argument, and a fact? Yes? Okay. So in these argumentative articles, in the introduction, that is the first paragraph, you will always have the author's main opinion, and your job is to find out. In this case, the author's opinion is that the fact that people are reading less literature has unfortunate effects. Is that okay? Are we good so far? Any questions about that part? No? Okay. Now, in any argumentative text, if the author is trying to convince people of something, you cannot just say something without trying to prove it, right? Without giving points to support what you're saying. So I cannot just say something and leave it there out of the blue, right? I have to support what I'm saying. If I have an opinion and let's say I'm debating, then I have to give reasons supporting that opinion. So that is what the author is going to do here. Since you have an argumentative article and the author is presenting their opinion, then you will always have 3 reasons supporting the author's opinion, okay? So each reason will be in each paragraph. These are gonna be the body paragraphs, by the way. You have the introduction and the body of the essay or the article, sorry. So this will be reason number 1, this will be reason number 2, and this will be reason number 3. Now, in each paragraph, the author is trying to give you proof, to give you evidence or reasons supporting his opinion that this trend has unfortunate effects, okay? Were you able to identify those reasons? So what is reason number 1? Why does why does the fact that people read less literature is unfortunate? What is the first reason the author gives? Why is this such a negative thing? According to the first paragraph, or the first body paragraph, sorry. What do we have here, guys?
I think it's the first sentence says there has been decline in book reading.
Okay, but that is a fact as well, right? It's not a reason. I mean, we know already that there has been a decline in book reading and that it's been especially sharp for literature. That is what the author says at the beginning, that a study reveals that people are reading less these days. But what the author is trying to prove here is that this is a negative thing, right? Now, why is this a negative thing? We have the first reason here. What is that first reason?
It could be this is unfortunate because nothing else provides the intellectual stimulation that literature does.
Great, exactly. Yes. So as you can see, you even have that because, right? That because means reason. So according to the author, the fact that people are reading less is unfortunate, basically means is sad, right? This is so sad because nothing else provides the intellectual stimulation that literature does. So the first reason why the author thinks that this is such a tragedy is because, according to him, nothing else gives us that intellectual stimulation we need, okay? So the entire paragraph is about that. Is that okay? Yes? Do we agree on this too? We're trying to summarize it. I'm just highlighting the most important parts. Is that okay? Or any questions about the first reason? All right. Now, what about the second reason? What was the main idea or the main reason in this secondary paragraph? Come on, guys, what would you say? What is this all about?
Instead of sitting down with a challenging novel, many people are now more likely to turn on the television.
Okay, that's right. And why is that bad?
Mm.
You know, if you see, when another thing I can do, you know, here in these articles, you will have different ideas. So for example, this, what you're saying, television, music videos, web pages, if you think about it, they're really specific, right? You're talking about one specific thing. So these are examples. So these are examples of what? Of trivial forms of entertainment, right? According to the author, television, music videos, web pages are trivial forms of entertainment. So when we're trying to come up with a main idea, we're not gonna go with examples. Let's go for the more general part, the broad idea. So what is the reason here?
It could be these are usually superficial, poorly writing, and intellectually undemanding.
Okay, these are usually superficially poorly written. That is correct too, but again, that is just what we're saying when we say trivial forms of entertainment, because superficially poorly written, intellectually undemanding, basically is a definition of the word trivial, right? So I think everything comes down to one idea, which is the fact that we're not reading literature means that the culture is being lowered, right? That is the main point. Why? Because according to the author, music videos, web pages, television, this entertainment that is superficially written and that is not demanding is not a form of culture, right? So the fact that we're not reading anymore and we're doing those other trivial forms of entertainment, that means that the level of culture has been lowered. Okay? Do you guys agree with me? Yes? Okay. Now, what about the third reason? What is this third reason? What's another reason why it is so sad that people are not reading literature anymore?
Is the writing as well as the reading of literature is likely to decline?
Exactly, great. So everything comes down to that, right? Here the author explains like what's going on with the writers and how they lack an audience, but the result of that, the result of the fact that we're not reading literature anymore means that writers in the future are not going to write as much. So the writing as well as the reading is likely to decline because of the fact that we don't read literature anymore, right? Now, I didn't mention this before because this won't happen every time. So I don't want you guys to expect this every time that you have an article. But in the beginning, you had an idea of the summary, right? It says, the trend is so unfortunate for the reading public. So that means that the reading public is not stimulated anymore. That is reason number one. For culture, that is reason number two, that culture is being lowering. And reason number three, right? The future of literature, which means that authors are not going to write literature anymore because they don't have an audience. Okay. Now, this is a good, it's like a good hint, but you won't always have something like that. Okay. So don't expect to have like a summary in the beginning. You could, but it's not always going to be the case. So is this okay, guys? Do you guys understand the 3 points? Do you get the main idea how this works? Yes? Okay. Now remember, this is only gonna be in the case of an argumentative article. There are 2 more options, okay? But this one is the most common one. So you have 4 paragraphs, you have an introduction with the main opinion of the author, and then you have 3 reasons supporting that opinion. Any questions about this reading? No? Okay, so we're gonna go and listen to the lecture. Now, I want you guys to remember, you need to, same thing as we said for the speaking, right? If you read carefully and you understand the reading, then the odds are higher that you will understand the listening and it will be easier to follow. But if you didn't understand this, and if you didn't catch the main points, then it's gonna be harder for you to understand the listening. And believe me, that is more important. So now that you have this, you know that the main idea is that the author thinks that the people reading less literature is bad. First, because we are not being intellectually stimulated. Second, because culture the level of culture is lowering. And third, because the future of literature is in risk, right? Remember that while you listen to the lecture. I'm gonna play it. And I want you guys to take notes. Remember, we said in the lecture, the professor will respond to all of those ideas that were presented in the reading. So it will be a response to that. Now, every time that you have an argumentative article, the professor will object. Okay?
Now listen to part.
Sorry. The professor will say the exact opposite of what the writer said. So the writer says, this is black, the professor will say, this is white. Okay, the writer says, this is good, the professor says, well, that's not good. So the professor will object everything the author has said, pay attention to those arguments, and take notes.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
It is often said that people are reading less literature today than they used to. What should we make of this? Well, first, a book doesn't have to be literature to be intellectually stimulating. Science writing, history, political analysis, and so forth aren't literature, perhaps, but they're often of high quality, and these kinds of books can be just as creative and well-written as a novel or a play. They can stimulate the imagination, So don't assume that someone who isn't reading literature isn't reading a good book. But let's say that people aren't just spending less time with literature, they're also spending less time with books in general. Does that mean that the culture is in decline? No, there's plenty of culturally valuable material that isn't written. Music and movies, for example. Are people wasting their time when they listen to a brilliant song or watch a good movie? Do these non-literary activities lower cultural standards? Of course not. Culture
I'm sorry? David, did you say something? Can you guys hear the audio well?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, okay. So I'll go back 10 seconds.
example. Are people wasting their time when they listen to a brilliant song or watch a good movie? Do these non-literary activities lower cultural standards? Of course not. Culture has changed. In today's culture, there are many forms of expression available other than novels and poems, and some of these creative forms speak more directly to contemporary concerns than literature does. Finally, it's probably true that there's less support for literature today than in earlier generations, but don't be too quick to blame the readers. Sometimes it's the author's fault. Let's be honest. A lot of modern literature is intended to be difficult to understand. There's not much reason to suppose that earlier generations of readers would have read a lot of today's literature either.
Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they cast doubt on specific points made in the reading passage.
Okay, guys. So that was the lecture. I don't know if you noticed, but as I was telling you, the professor will always object the author's points when we talk about an argumentative type of text, okay? But either way, the professor will always respond to whatever was said in the article. So this is kind of how you should organize your notes. You know, from the article, I told you not to take notes, so we're gonna leave this here in blank. But first of all, what was the professor's opinion? What does the professor think about the topic that people are reading less literature?
The people read less literature.
Okay, is that an opinion though? We said that wasn't an opinion, right? Because a study has revealed that. So it's not an opinion, it's a fact. People read less literature, it's just a fact. But remember, the author had an opinion about that. The author said that that was a bad thing, that that wasn't so good, that was a negative or an unfortunate thing. Now remember we said the professor in the lecture will always object, contradict whatever the article said. So what was the professor's opinion about this? The structure is the same. Did you guys notice that the structure was the same in the lecture? I mean, of course, you cannot see the paragraphs like you do here, but were you able to identify like the ideas, how they were separated? Because the professor also had an introduction and 3 reasons. Did you hear that? Yes, right? So in the introduction of the professor, you have the main idea or the opinion of the professor. What was it? Anyone? Let's listen to this part again.
About.
It is often said that people are reading less literature today than they used to. What should we make of this? Well, first, a book doesn't have to be literature.
The topic you just read about.
It is often
So in the introduction, the professor doesn't say anything, right? I mean, there's no opinion there. Do you think that at the end we have something, or what could you get out of the entire lecture? What does the professor say? Does the professor think that this is unfortunate? No, right? The professor will always have the opposite opinion, okay? You know that already. So I'm telling you, whenever you have an argumentative text, the reading and the listening are opposite. So the reading says, animals are cute. The professor will say, animals are not cute. The reading says, I don't know, I don't know, this X person was the best president. The professor will object that. No, that he wasn't. Right? So it will be the opposite. So we know that if the reading says that this trend has unfortunate effects, the professor will say the opposite, which is that the fact that people are reading less literature is not that unfortunate, right? It's not that sad, it's not that bad. Is that okay, you guys? Do you agree with me on the opinion that the professor has? Yes? Okay. Now, this is the most important part. What reasons does the professor have? How does the professor respond to this argument that nothing else provides the intellectual stimulation that literature does? What does the professor say about that? Is that true? Shadia, what do you think?
She thinks that the movies and music gives the intellectual stimulation like the literature.
Okay, kind of. I don't know if it was movies and music, right? I think that's related to the second point. The professor mentioned something else. Let's listen again to just the first part.
It is often said that people are reading less literature today than they used to. What should we make of this? Well, first, a book doesn't have to be literature to be intellectually stimulating.
Right? A book doesn't have to be literature to be intellectually stimulating.
Science writing, history, political analysis, and so forth aren't literature, perhaps, but they're often of high quality, and these kinds of books can be just as creative and well-written as a novel or a play. They can stimulate the imagination. So don't assume that someone who isn't reading literature isn't reading a good book.
Right? That was the first argument. Music and videos weren't mentioned, but instead the professor says that there are other types of books, like science fiction, like I think it was, I don't know, history, right? Science fiction, history. There are other types of books that are not literature, but that are just as stimulating as literature, right? They're just as good books as literature is. So if you're not reading literature, you can still be stimulated with other types of books, right? Is that okay? Do you guys agree with me? Was that kind of the reason or no? Yes, right? So we're gonna say there are other types of books just as stimulating. And we have as examples, we have science fiction, history. I don't know if there were more. I think there were more books. Okay? Is that okay, guys? Yes? So that's why the author thinks that it's not such a bad thing, right? It's okay that we're not reading literature because we have other books that are stimulating too. Now, what about the second reason? How does the author respond to this? So how does the author feel about, like, is it actually true that the level of culture is declining? What does she say about this?
The culture is changing and is more than literature.
Exactly. So it's similar to the first argument, but it's not the same, right? So great, the professor says culture comes in different ways, in different forms. So it's changing. I mean, literature isn't the only form of culture. There are others. Anything else you guys want to add?
There are many expressions of culture.
Great. Exactly. There are many expressions of culture, right? And here the professor says that a good video or a good movie, let's say a good song, could even speak more directly to the audience than a book, right? It's like it contains culture as well, and it could be even more direct than a book, than a literary book, right? So we have those examples of music, videos, films, and so forth. Great. Now, what about the last one? What does the professor think about this? What does she say? Guys? The professor here says, I'm sorry? Go ahead, please.
The way of the author writes literature, it is difficult to understand.
Okay. Great. Exactly. So while the author of the article says that, I mean, it is our fault, the reader's fault, that our writers, I mean, yeah, the writers are not going to write literature anymore. The professor says that the fact that we read less literature is also the author's fault, right? Because they write books that are hard to understand. So we don't read, I mean, that's the reason why we don't read those books. So if they lack an audience, it's their fault as well, according to the professor, right? Anything else you guys want to add here? Or is that okay? Okay, guys. So that is it. We spent, honestly, a little bit, I mean, more than we should have here, but it's fine because we still have tomorrow's class to finish, okay? Tomorrow we will see how to actually write the essay. We have just seen the examples of reading and listening now. Now tomorrow I'm gonna give you guys the template. By the way, this is the one, so it's already here. And we're gonna actually write the essay. So we're gonna fill it out. I know it seems long, but believe me, once we talk about it, it's gonna be easier to remember. Because right now you may be seeing this template and being like, how am I supposed to remember all that right in the test? But it's the same. Basically, just to like, as an overview of the template, in your essay, what you're supposed to do is contrast. Contrast the reading with the listening. So you're supposed to report like you were a news reporter and be like, the reading said this, but the professor said that. The reading said that reading less literature is a bad thing. However, the professor says that it's not such a bad thing after all. The reading says that nothing else provides us with intellectual stimulation, but the professor says that there are other types of books just as stimulating. The reading says that, I don't know, the reading says that the level of culture is declining, but the professor says that there are other expressions of culture. So that's what you're gonna do, pretty much. But obviously, since this is an academic piece of writing, you're not gonna use so simple words, right? Like the reading says, but the professor says. You're gonna use synonyms. So instead of saying the reading so much, you're gonna change that from time to time. So you're gonna start, let's say, by saying the reading extract, and then you're gonna say the article, and then you're gonna say the author. But you're still referring to the same thing. You're still referring to the text, right? You're just using different words so that you don't repeat. Because another thing I forgot to say, remember I told you vocabulary was part of the rubric? So the way that they evaluate your vocabulary, one is automatized. So basically, this will be written by a computer, and the computer will count how many words you have and how many words you have repeated. So let's say you have 100 words, and out of those 100 words that you have repeated 2 times, I don't know, 5 words. So that is gonna contribute to your score as well. So you really don't want to repeat words too much, and that's why we're using synonyms, okay? Obviously, vocabulary is also evaluated by a person, by a rater. But first of all, it's gonna go through a machine, okay, guys? So that's why we use synonyms. We say the reading extract, the article, the author, but it's still the reading. We're not just gonna say but, right? We're not gonna say but the professor said, but the professor says. We use synonyms. You say, however, nevertheless, on the other hand, still, and so forth. So that's basically it. That's what we're gonna do. Of course, we have to see a few things. For example, you have to write only 1 sentence for the reading, and you have to write 2 sentences for the listening. We're gonna see how to do all of that. I'm gonna give you guys some tips too on how to meet the criteria, how to show different grammar structures, how to memorize a few keywords for your vocabulary. So we'll do all of that tomorrow. Okay, guys? But do you have any questions so far about what we've done today? Any questions? Is everything okay? Everything clear so far? Yes? Okay, guys, perfect. So then please, before you go, don't forget to fill out today's survey. I just started it. And I'll be seeing you all tomorrow night. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, teacher.
Bye, me.
Bye, teacher.
Bye,
Thank you,
teacher.
bye.